The next session is on investment opportunities in a $10 trillion economy. India is all set to become a $10 trillion economy by 2030. And this means we'll see heightened interest of investors in equities. We'd like to welcome Mr. Ravi Gopalakrishnan, who will help us seize the opportunities that lie ahead of us. He joined Sundaram AMC in January 22 and has 3 decades of experience in research and asset management. I also have to tell you that he's here to take this session, and I want all of you to be here because this session is going to be of importance to all of you. May I please welcome him up on stage? Please join me in welcoming him as well.
Good afternoon, everybody. I think it's a wonderful crowd, and probably I'm standing between you and lunch. So I'm very sensitive about that because I don't like to change my lunch time also. So let's make it, you know, I shouldn't say quick and dirty, but let's make it, as simple as it can be. So, one thing is quite clear that in the next 3 years, next 15 years, I think our economy is going to go at least 3x. And when you look at market capitalization, it usually tags the GDP growth. And this 10 trillion number, although looks very far and magical, but I can tell you, it's fairly achievable because we see a lot of opportunities in terms of consumption and investment, because these are the two broad pillars which probably will take India out there. And the next decade will actually transform us from a poor stroke middle income country towards more in terms of consumption patterns and all that, and discretionary spending and everything, the millennials and all that. I'll spend some time on that. And I think this is the inflection point, the $2,000 per capita income, is a massive inflection point in terms of, how consumption and how capital expenditure and all of that changes for a specific economy. And we have examples of some of that. And, and essentially, it is these two pillars which are going to drive the momentum out there. So, how do we see this happening, right? We see this happening by 2036. The 10 trillion in terms of the macroeconomic growth. And like I said, so the last 10 years, it's not a last decade, but it's a lost decade, because it was just the consumption side which was kind of firing in. The investment side was pretty much benign. But I think as we move forward and as we cross this $2,000 per capita, I think both these engines will fire up, and that's what is kind of going to take us to that 10 trillion mark, which effectively means, when you put things in terms of numbers, it's about 12% CAGR in terms of rupee terms, and if you take a 3% depreciation, it's about 9% in dollar terms, which is not something which is unachievable, right? Yeah, so from the consumption side, so I'm talking about the consumption pillar right now. The chart is probably something that you have seen before, in terms of our demographics and how things are likely to shift. So if you look at the past 20, 30 years, bulk of the money was largely spent in your roti kapda. I wouldn't say makan, because makan was terribly out of reach in terms of everyone. But broadly, that number from 50% is actually closing down to about 25. And a lot of the consumption is now shifting towards discretionary items. The Gen Z, the millennials, all of that, right, will actually end up pushing that discretionary consumption quite substantially. And what's more important is the top 3 buckets. I'm not getting into too much detail in all that because of the time constraint, but the top 3 buckets, elite, affluent, and aspirers, are actually, these are the guys who will actually come and spend, go from 33% of population to about 50% of that population. So you can imagine that hockey stick effect playing out. This is the very important chart that I would like to you to focus on, because we've crossed the $2,000 mark, and I was talking about the inflection points. And According to estimates, by FY30, we will effectively double that number. Now, what is the impact of that, right? Let's take a couple of examples. On the left side is China, on the right side is South Korea. China hit that number way back in 2005 odd, right? The $2,000 mark. And today they are close to about 10, 12,000 per capita. You look at that hockey stick effect the moment it crosses $2,000. And what has happened to the Chinese car penetration? From almost 16 per thousand, it has crossed over 100 in the last 15 years. India is exactly where they are, 13 per thousand today. Okay? Let's look at South Korea. They achieved it far, much before that because of the population, and it's anyway a fairly developed economy, right? Somewhere in the mid-80s. That's when they achieved their $2,000. And the motor vehicle penetration, actually excluding two-wheelers, went from like 50 to 400. That's the kind of delta you're seeing, right? So, and this is not only restricted to motor cars. When you look at air conditioners, refrigerators, you name it, there's a massive change that is happening. Now, talking about the investment cycle, I think it is a very important pillar here. And we are at the early cycle, primarily because, like I said, the last 5-7 years, not much of capex has happened, and hence we see a tremendous amount of potential over there. Especially around PLI, China plus one, Europe plus one, all those tailwinds are all available. Now, why we are bullish in terms of the capex, recovery? Primarily because there are 8 key enablers. First of all, corporate India is completely deleveraged. You look at that corporate debt as a percentage of GDP, which is the lower number, has fallen substantially. This puts gives a lot of strength to, in terms of the balance sheet and in terms of the corporates to borrow and get into capex mode, because the last 7-8 years, they haven't done anything. So when growth comes back, you'll see massive momentum building up. Similarly, low household debt, real estate has done well, supply side is improving, of course, notwithstanding the geopolitical issues, but certainly I think domestic demand and consumer confidence has gone up significantly. So I think we expect a massive increase in capacity utilization. Look at the capex as a percentage of GDP. Even that, after touching a low, we expect that to kind of move up quite substantially. So from a net economic picture perspective, I think what is more important is to look at the investable themes surrounding India, right? This is where the opportunities are. Okay. Now, if I look at the consumption side of it, for example, consumer durables, let's take an example, right? The penetration level, again, is extremely low. I spoke about, whether it is cars or whether it is, the low-end consumer durables, et cetera, et cetera. From a world standard or even from an Asian standard, we have perhaps not even touched the surface. Let me give you an example of air conditioners, for example. Today, a lot of people have air conditioners in maybe one room or something like that, right? Imagine if there's a 3-bedroom apartment, people will start with 1 bedroom, or, if there's a 2-bed, maybe 1 bedroom will have an AC. Suddenly, that thing can go up 3x. Now, don't go and buy AC shares. Please don't do that, because this is all going to take a long time to play out. But just to give you an example, autos I already spoke about, there is like significant amount of penetration that is yet to be. Two-wheelers is a classic example, if you will, because two-wheeler penetration has done extremely well in India. So I think four-wheelers will also kind of catch up. Quick service restaurants, what can I say about that? Like these are the millennials and, the new age kind of habits that we are seeing, and there's tremendous potential out there. Similarly, retailing, organized retailing, building materials. Everyone wants to, upgrade their lifestyles, etc. So there's a lot of tailwind out there. Similarly, on the investment side, you're looking at the banking and finance space, ports and logistics, because that becomes a very crucial thread in this entire growth and development, because until and unless we have efficient port and logistics services, achieving that target will be very difficult. Similarly, cap goods, capital goods. That 10, 15 years you haven't heard about capital goods, and the companies are really struggling. But now slowly you're seeing that momentum actually pick up. Overall manufacturing led by PLI, China plus one, et cetera, because India has got a lot of core competence in some of these areas. Similarly, infrastructure and real estate. So overall, I think the drivers are all in place. It's a matter of really pushing forward, and I think the economy is really, really vibrant. Now, I'm sure a lot of the audience are thinking, ये सब तो पता है, what is so new in this, right? Market का क्या होगा पहले वो बताओ, right? That is what we are here for, right? So I won't disappoint you. I'm going to leave you with just 2 slides, okay? The reason being, I think we are talking about a $10 trillion economy. Let's look at, how market cap is connected with this 10 trillion, okay? You take any history of any country. Market cap usually tags the economic growth, okay? It'll happen over 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, right? Look at the relationship, look at the China example, right? China's 15-year nominal GDP was 13%. Their market cap grew 18%. Similarly, South Korea, 3% and 7%. India also pretty much 1:1. So even if you assume a 1:1 kind of a ratio, okay, $10 trillion, 12 times compounding, it's a fantastic number. I know most of you want a 50% return and all of that, but there's nothing like, sitting back and enjoying the journey. So this brings me to a classic example of our good old Western Railway, which I'm very familiar with, right? आपको जाना है बोरीवली, आप बैठेंगे चर्च गेट से, right? So the choice is with you. आपको फुटपोर्ट पे खड़ा रह के जाना है कि अंदर जाके बैठ के आराम से जाना है. Lot of people say मुझे फुटपोर्ट पे मजा आ रहा है क्योंकि हवा आता है. I can see what is happening outside. मुझे यूक्रेन में क्या चल रहा है पता चल रहा है, मुझे पुतिन क्या कर रहा है वो सब मालूम पड़ रहा है, right? You're distracting. Basically, you like that action and activity. The other guy is simply saying, अच्छा, there are some people who are smarter than us, marine line से बैठ के जाते हैं पीछे, right? And then they are sitting back and then enjoying their journey by sitting, बैठ के जाएंगे, right? The point is, जाना है सबको बोरीवली, but the mode is very, very different. The psyche of the people is very, very different. Acha, this guy on the footboard again is looking outside and enjoying. Every station he wants to get down and figure out what is happening, right? अब सोचो दादर पहुंचते क्या होगा, वापस अंदर नहीं घुसेगा, दादर में out, right? अच्छा, worst is, I don't know how many people are familiar with Jogeshwari station. The bloody damn thing has 2 platforms. यहाँ से घुसे वहाँ से बाहर. So the choice is really with the individual in terms of how you want to take this journey. You want to sit back, look at the big picture. You know for a fact that market cap is going to tag GDP. If you have faith that you're going to go to a $10 trillion economy, अच्छा 36 में नहीं होगा, 40 में होगा, it's okay, 12 नहीं मिलेगा, 10 मिलेगा. But the journey is, the direction is clear, right? This is the second chart I want to say, is that I have seen at least 4 bear markets, 5 bull markets, and each time, whenever there is a massive decline, I am really, really happy because that puts a lot of opportunity. So if you have that $10 trillion picture, market cap is going to tag all of that. These are the opportunities that one should be looking at. Not, think about what's going to happen in Ukraine, Russia, and all of that, right? Now look at the statistics, right? I don't need to tell you all this, but certainly at the bottom to the top, almost 600% change, 400% change, 150% change after every single event. Now this event hopefully shouldn't, become a, real pain point, but you don't know, right? But one has to be ready, one has to be really prepared and take advantage of that rather than standing on the footboard and trying to worry, हर एक स्टेशन में क्या वातावरण चल रहा है, and trying to analyze. अंदर जाके बैठो, ताश खेलो, भजन सुनो, do all of that. I think that's a better journey to choose, right? Once you have your goals set in. Well, I think I'm on time. I have about 30 seconds left, but I would like to close. Good luck to everybody, and wishing you all a fantastic holiday season. Thank you so much.